Welcome to Talk with Tara, the podcast where we dive into the bold, the funny, and the fascinating. I'm Tara, your host, bringing you unfiltered conversations on life, love, and everything in between. Hit that follow button so you're always in the loop. And now let's get started. Well, hello, listeners. Today, we're going to talk about something that is very important to all of us in midlife, and that is menopause. And we have Rachel Ann on. She's the founder of the Menopause Education Center. And before I get started and I introduce her to you officially, I'm going to give you a quick bio about Rachel Ann. Rachel Ann is a passionate advocate for women's health and the founder of the Menopause Education Center, a groundbreaking initiative dedicated to reshaping the conversations around menopause. With a mission to empower women with knowledge, confidence, and support, Rachel is pioneering a 360-degree approach to menopause education, addressing not just physical changes, but also the emotional, relational, and professional aspects of this transformative phase in our lives. Recognizing that menopause impacts every area of life, Rachel has developed tailored courses not only for women, but also for their partners to foster deeper understanding and stronger relationships. She is also leading the charge in HR training and workplace policy reform, ensuring that companies create menopause-friendly cultures where women can thrive both personally and professionally. Through the Menopause Education Center, Rachel is breaking taboos, providing science-backed education, and offering practical tools to help women navigate menopause with clarity, strength, and empowerment. Her mission is simple but profound. From the bedroom to the boardroom and everywhere in between, women deserve to feel seen, supported, and celebrated. Amen. I love that. But before we start, a quick disclaimer: the information shared in this episode of Talk with Tara featuring Rachel Ann is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical or professional advice. While we discuss menopause, hormone health, and workplace policies, this podcast does not replace personalized medical guidance. So please consult with a qualified healthcare provider for making any decisions about menopause management, HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or lifestyle changes. So with that, Rachel Ann, welcome to Talk with Tara. I am thrilled to have you today, and you're coming from Maui, right?
I am. Thank you so much for being here. Getting a chance to spend some time in Maui to do my own personal healing, which is one of the things that we really talk about, is women taking ownership of what they need in their lives and fearlessly pursuing that, whether it is in the boardroom or the bedroom. And menopause tends to kind of sneak up on us and interrupt that. Remember that movie Girl Interrupted? Well,
Yes.
My mission is to make sure it is not woman interrupted by something as natural as biology.
Oh, that's great. How did you get involved in menopause? Like what? I know you're so passionate about this. Tell us your backstory.
So earlier in my 50s, as I was a woman about to enter into my 50s, I'm 52 now, I noticed some things starting to happen to me. And when I went to my doctor to talk about them, she didn't mention menopause. She didn't mention perimenopause. She's like, oh, you're losing your hair, your dad, it's genetic. I was like, okay. I'm a little depressed. She's like, yeah, that happens. It's life. Here's an SSRI. And all these other things that she didn't acknowledge. And I, had never heard my mother talk about menopause. I'd never heard a friend talk about menopause. I'd never seen a news story or a celebrity talk about menopause, because we're going back like almost an entire decade ago, and this was not talked about. And so, moving through my early 40s, I get into my mid to late 40s, and I'm like 47 now in this time frame. And we're at lunch with a friend. And this is like the friend that all of us want to be, the woman who has the lovely marriage, and she's an amazing friend and an amazing mother, and and really a heartfelt, amazing woman, but she has all of it together in like an unnatural way almost. And we're all at lunch, and the next thing you know, she starts like sweating and like crying almost. And we're kind of watching this whole breakdown happen. And then she goes to the restroom, and she's gone for like 15 minutes, comes back, she's all composed, and we're all just kind of like sitting there like, what just happened?
What happened?
And she's like, girl, menopause is coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, what? Because as far as all I knew about menopause is I'd heard of hot flashes. And in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I love hot weather. I love hot yoga. This is going to be amazing.
Right.
As we started to go down the rabbit hole and watch what was happening, you can imagine then that night we all went home and like Googled menopause and hot flashes. And the more that I learned, it was like the scariest, to be honest with you. It was like the scariest week of my life, sitting there on the internet, reading what was about to happen to me, what was happening in my own body. I can't even ever find really the word for it, because I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure many women that are listening to this podcast, the fear When aging becomes a fear, that's the most awful feeling in the world. When I'm looking in the mirror and I don't even know that I have an endocrine system, and all of a sudden I'm 50 something years old and I'm finding out that I have a whole system in my body that controls my hormones. Why is nobody telling me about this? Right. I could lose all my bone density because my estrogen is going away. That would have been nice to know. So I maybe could have mitigated that or done some things differently in my youth to prepare for optimum health later in life in this second chapter. So the more that I started seeing all these things, I was mortified. And then you get into some really sad statistics. 2 out of 3 women in corporate America considering quitting their jobs right when they get to the top of their careers because they can't manage their symptoms and their careers. And the companies aren't, making them feel safe or supported. So they're just opting to leave. So when I started to read about that, I was mortified. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Mm-hmm. I know from my own friends' experiences, they didn't go to as many parties in college because they wanted to study and they wanted to get the fancy jobs. And then they sacrificed time away from their families to climb the corporate ladder. And then they get to the top of the corporate ladder and their hormones knock them down.
Because they don't want the sweat when they're, sweating in the meeting with their silk shirt.
Yeah. So it was all just terrifying. And then the highest divorce rate, they've now been able to measure that the highest divorce rates are during a woman's menopausal years, mm-hmm. which correlates with lack of intimacy, communication, all those things that start the breakdown of a marriage. They've been able to really see that that's happening during a woman's menopausal years. Then you come across the statistics of women taking their own lives. And this one really, rocked me because women would go to their doctors and it could have happened to me. I could have been that statistic. I was depressed. My doctor's like, here's an SSRI. What he should have done is said, let's test your hormones. Let's see what's going on in your body and your thyroid and your adrenals and really look at your body before I just throw medication at you. So you read these stories of these women that went to their doctors, were diagnosed with depression, were instantly put on an SSRIs without fixing a hormone imbalance are not necessarily effective. And so these women are coming back 6 months, 7 months, 8 months later and going, oh my God, I must be really broken because I'm on antidepressants and I'm still depressed. And they end up taking their own lives. So between all the stories of marriages being ruined, families being ruined, women just being ruined by biology, I was like, you know what, not on my watch. So with my background in coaching and organizational psychology and entrepreneurship, I'm like, I can fix this. And at the time, no one was talking about it like they were now. We're going back when I first started the Menopause Education Center. Oprah was not talking about it. Drew Barrymore was not talking about it. Naomi Watts was not talking about it. Harvard wasn't writing about it. Like all of these things in the last 5 years have finally come out to make this subject no longer in the shadows.
Yeah. And why do you ended up here? Why do you think it was in the shadows?
When I asked my mom why she never told me about menopause, her answer to me was my grandma never talked about her mother had never talked to her about menopause. So part of me thinks that it went so in the shadows because generationally, women didn't talk about it. Women didn't talk about it with their parents. Mothers didn't talk about it with their children. Mothers teach their girls about puberty and your period and maybe having a baby about it. Even doctors, will carry you all the way through fertility. And then when you're done childbearing, it's like you're on your own.
Yeah.
So I think it just wasn't, I think women were ashamed of aging. I don't think the movement was where women felt empowered to be 50 and fabulous. I think society had women shameful about getting older. Companies, I don't think paid attention to women's health until recently. Like even now, look at the movement where there's breastfeeding centers and you're allowed to do certain things and they're building special rooms. And also look at the flip side for men, even with their prostate. It wasn't hip and cool to go get your prostate checked 20 years ago. Now you got celebrities that are TikToking it on the way to the doctor. So I think society is changing and women are rising up. And we're no longer going to just be second-class citizens that are not cared for at the highest level in our lives, in the medical system, anywhere that we are, which is everywhere.
Okay. Well, I'm so excited that you're doing this because we definitely need it. There's so much misinformation. You go to your doctor and they say, so let me give you a little story about my situation. I went to my doctor, actually my girlfriend, I have this girlfriend who just knows everything about everything. And we were on a walk and she said, we have to start taking hormone replacement therapy. Our bones are going to become brittle. You have to do it before you stop your period. We need to do it for brain fog. We need to do it for our hair. And look at this video, and you get estrogen for your skin, like a moisturizer. And I'm like, what? I have to what? And she was going through all the statistics and giving me the background. And all of a sudden I panicked. I thought, let me go make an appointment with my doctor. So I went to my OBGYN, and she said, oh, no, you can't. You're still getting your period. No HRT for you. No. I'm like, okay. So then I went to another doctor, and she goes, yeah, I think it's prudent to maybe take a very low dose estrogen and a low dose progesterone, just to protect your bone health and based on your age. And why not? Let's do it. Right. So I said, oh, okay. So then I went to a naturopath, and she tested all of my hormones. So she tested everything. And she said, I agree with your Western doctor. Let's do this very low dose. Let's keep you on the progesterone. Let's give you a little bit of testosterone. And the other OBGYN that I first went to, when I saw her a year later, I told her I had the testosterone cream. She said, oh, you shouldn't be taking that. You're going to lose your hair and you're going to get a big stomach. Stop taking that immediately and stop taking those hormones. I told you. Then I went to another doctor, Western doctor. She said, just take estrogen, forget the progesterone. Then I went back to my doctor, and she said, you need to take the progesterone. So I'm like, who is right? Okay. I've seen 4 or 5 people. Who is the authority of this? And I still don't know who the authority is. It's frustrating for women.
It is. And that was one of the other things I didn't mention. And as I was getting into this, everything that I wanted to get education, there was nothing out there that was going to educate me that didn't have some kind of call to action to sell me something. So it was like, oh, we'll tell you what menopause does to your skin so we can sell you our skin cream. We're going to tell you about hormones so we can sell you our hormone replacement programs. And I ended up feeling so sold. And then the information that came from academic sources like the Mayo Clinic, the National Institute of Health, the Menopause Society was so archaic that it felt like I was watching a driver's ed video in like 1980 that was from 1950. So there was nothing out there that was inspiring, that was modern, that was curated so you could avoid exactly what you just described. So what we do in our course for women is 90% of the course is all about empowerment. So you would have gone to your first doctor with, you're testing all of these hormones. I'm not accepting your answer. I want a bone density test so I could get my baseline so we know what's happening in my body. You would have been able to navigate that without that aspect of fear and being run around like a chicken. I also recommend to every woman, you're very lucky you were proactive, that they should absolutely add either a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath to their care team. Because for some reason, and this is actually another scary statistic, is doctors have admitted that they don't know anything about menopause.
Yeah.
Now they're fighting in Washington to have menopause be part of continuing education for OBGYNs. But there's like some crazy statistic, we could actually look it up, of how many OBGYNs say they had like one course in medical school on menopause, which was like the last chapter after fertility. So now it's being studied and talked about, and people are fighting so that this doesn't happen. So education does that. Preparation does that. So my goal in my life is to be the Tony Robbins of menopause and make sure women are being proactive about their health instead of reactive. So that's a lot about what we focus on. But your experience is what everybody talks about. This is like what happens to every woman. They get run around by their doctors. Their friends are like, oh, your friend sounds proactive and amazing. But taking the approach of saying you need to be on something, again, a little bit scary, because what might be right for her is not right for you. So we talk about how to have those conversations with friends. This is what I'm doing and how I'm feeling. You may want to ask your doctor if what I'm doing is also right for you because I'm thriving. Different than creating this fear of, oh my God, if you don't do this, you're going to lose all your hair, your bones are going to break, and you're going to die at 53. So much just around that. Isn't that fascinating?
It is. And, I was at the nail salon last week, and I was sitting next to a woman. She was probably in her 60s because I think she told me she was 60 something. And she said, I don't know how it came up, but she was talking about, oh, my nails were brittle. And she said, yeah, my nails are brittle too. And she said, you need to go get a bone density test. I didn't get one until I was 60 or whatever the recommended age is, 64 or something like that. And I wish I would have had a baseline because now nobody knows my baseline. It's too late. And she said, go get a bone density test. And I said, well, maybe my insurance won't cover it. She said, it's only like $150 or $200 maximum. And it takes 15 minutes. It's not a big deal. I didn't know that. My doctors never talked about bone density. I mean, you're talking about it now, but and the woman in the nail salon, it's the first time I had heard anything like that. So now I have another tip that I learned from a woman in a nail salon and not my doctor.
Yeah, which is again, why I exist in this world, why I invested in curating courses that were practical, that gave information, unbiased, factual information that follows the best practices in the medical community, in the health community. All of the options for women are out there. And this bone density test. So I asked for a bone density test and my doctor was like, you're too young and you don't need it. And I looked at her, I'm like, I'm on a PPO, order this fucking test.
Yeah.
Like, why? She's like, she calls it a hypochondriac. I'm like, listen, this obviously is not working. If you're not going to order this test, I'm just going to go find a new doctor. What do you care? If I want every test in the world, you're not paying for it. I was so mad. But like,
right.
No one needs that.
Especially I know, but
on top of already, it was so annoying. So I eventually got it to get a baseline. I said to her, well, great. So no offense. So that means when I lose my bone mass that you can't replace once it's too late, you're going to give it back to me. And she was like,
exactly.
But I was knowledgeable. I knew what I was talking about. So I could stand up for myself and advocate for myself, which most women are not trained to do because we're not trained in society to question our doctors. But guess what? We should question everything they tell us and not question and go to Google and like research, but like in our own minds and hearts, fight for what we know is right. But the American medical system makes it so difficult.
Well, also, Rachel,
all this stuff.
I know, but Rachel, you have a lot of confidence. You have boundaries. You're a strong woman. What about women who are scared? They're scared of their doctors. They go in there and they're mousy and they don't want to challenge their doctors. And I'm also a strong woman and I ask for what I want. If I don't get it from this doctor, then I go to the next doctor like I did 4 or 5 doctors to get what I want. But what about those women? Should they bring a friend in maybe with them? I mean, what's your recommendation?
That is a great idea. And that's also, again, all these things that you're talking about are why I exist and why I've invested my life savings. My whole entire purpose in my life is to make sure that a woman doesn't feel like that. So if you're one of the listeners that is uncomfortable, non-confrontational, maybe you've had the same doctor for 20 years and you really like them and they've been really good to you. This is not a dig against them, but you have the right to be empowered. You have the right to be educated. And you have the right to advocate for yourself. So in our courses, we teach that. We have scripts. We write actual scripts so a woman who's not comfortable can read. If she wants to print out the piece of paper and take it into her doctor and read it from the piece of paper, she can do that. But we take that exact woman and turn her into her fiercest health advocate.
I love that.
Obviously, maybe not exactly like you and I. But so if you're out there and you're afraid to question your doctor, don't be. That's their job. Their job is to take care of you, not tell you what to do. So go in there. And we also have all these forms you can fill out to prepare for your doctor's visit. We even have, and this is an unfortunate tool, we have a tool that says what to do when your doctor dismisses you. What to do when your doctor says you don't need this. What to do when your doctor says I'm not running these tests. What to do when your doctor says, so based on my own personal experience and what women have been reporting, we have a tool or some kind of training inside our Menopause and You course to alleviate that, which is different than some of these companies that are out there that are doing telehealth. Like you've got all these big fancy companies, MIDI, Maven, Alloy. They're doctors looking to put you on HRT, looking to do all of these things. But you need to be empowered and educated first. So I feel like we are the first step in a woman getting the best care possible during her menopause years and even perimenopause. Because if you start earlier, like we said, you can be proactive about your health instead of reactive. But I love your idea of bringing a friend. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, bring a friend or, yeah.
And if you don't, you go online and you do look at Alloy or MIDI or some of these companies that do nothing but women's health. And you ask them to place that order with your insurance company. A few years ago, insurance was not covering nearly anything about menopause, but now people are starting to cover it and it's being covered by major health plans. So the world is changing. Like I said, it is coming out of the shadows in a big way.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Let me tell you the statistic, actually. I just looked it up as of today. So this is, I just wanted to verify because it changes all the time. But at any given time, there are 1.3 million women per year coming into menopause. 6,000 women a day are coming into menopause. So it's really, really fascinating at the average age of 51 in the United States. But perimenopause starts way early. Then there's this whole medical menopause that women are thrown into. If there's a breast cancer involved, like women's health is just really in need of a nice little upgrade. But we're getting there.
Yeah, good. People like you. So what are some early signs of perimenopause?
Great question. And they are so different. And that's one of the things that also makes diagnosis is hard, because even though blood tests and hormone levels are great to measure, menopause and perimenopause are really managed by the severity of symptoms, which is why tools like a diary or even what symptoms to look for that are happening in your body. It could be something as small as your period goes from 2 days to 5 days, or maybe it's usually 3 days and now it's super heavy. It could be even just as slight of, oh, my period's changing. It could be mood swings. Oh, I'm a little more irritable. It could be, I'm a little tired. I just snapped at my kid. The things that are happening could be so small at the beginning of this change that you don't even realize what's happening until all of a sudden you're like, okay, I need to go see my doctor because my cramps are worse. I'm aggravated all the time. I'm losing my hair. I work out 5 days a week, but I'm still gaining weight. Like all of these different things that happen in the body. So really paying attention to your body and tuning in is the best thing to do, and understanding what the symptoms look like. So like if I would have known that depression and hair loss would have been a symptom of perimenopause, I would have been able to address it differently. But because my dad was bald and I'm, of Jewish descent, I was like, hair loss is hereditary in my family. I didn't even think for a second it had anything to do with perimenopause. I was still bleeding. I had regular periods. So I wasn't questioning that anything happening to me, like depression. I was like, okay, maybe I'm depressed. I'm single, whatever. My life isn't turning out how I wanted it to be. So I had all these excuses for what was happening to me. But if I would have known that it was part of this hormonal change that is natural, I would have done some things differently. So being able to now be in a position to talk to the 40-year-old women, again, really empowering women to be proactive is such a special mission. And I'm so glad to be here at this time. So I'm the me that I wish would have been here when I was going through this.
What are some obvious signs that somebody should get help?
So if your period changes, if the length changes, if you start to skip a period, month here, month there. So period changes are the direct correlation, obviously, of hormonal changes in the body. Mood swings, when your hormones change, your mood swings, changes in your skin. If you're all of a sudden 45 years old and you're breaking out in acne, might be a good time to go talk to your doctor. And not a dermatologist, because dermatologists are going to treat the acne, but some dermatologists are very forward thinking. They'll be like, let's test your hormones and see what's going on here, because obviously hormones are involved in dermatology even when you're young, and cortisol and all those different types of things.
Lack of sleep, right? I have a friend who says
Lack of sleep,
and
insomnia,
I was waking up. Yeah.
Insomnia, but that also is related to the mood swings, because you can't fall asleep at night if your brain is running, if you're creating that fear response at night, if you have high cortisol at night, if you're triggering cortisol because you're stressed out all the time. And also then you think about where these women are at in their lives. They are in, maybe 5 to 10 years into their marriage. They maybe have had their first child and maybe had their second child. So now they're in a household with 2 children, possibly young, a husband, and then maybe on top of that, they have a career. Plus, on top of that, they have a life. They have friends, they have hobbies. So imagine what that looks like. It's an ecosystem for women to just not lose it if they're not supported and paying attention. So a diary, I recommend that everyone, as soon as you start to feel changes in your body, whether that's your mood, your hair texture, whether that's if you're sweating, if you're not sleeping, if your period is not wrong, if your skin starts to feel weird, keep a diary. Keep a diary for a month so you can track your symptoms. Because what that will do is symptoms will come from the different hormonal imbalances. So one of my favorite tools is we have a hormone toolkit that comes with a symptom tracker. So a woman could be like, oh, I have a mood swing. I have this, I have this, I have this. And over the course of a month, she actually can see what's happening in her body and what it's related to as a hormone. Your estrogen is high. Your progesterone is low. Your cortisol is high. You have hypothyroidism. Like gives her real data. So I'm all about data-driven decisions. So we try to make tools that help women collect data on what they're going through so they could discuss that with their healthcare professional and find solutions.
Oh, I like that. So you said everybody should have a functional medical doctor. Can you tell people, our listeners, what a functional medical doctor can do for them?
Yeah. So a lot of people, for some reason, think that a functional medicine doctor is not a real MD. So first, that is a myth. They are absolutely a fully trained medical doctor. They approach the body, though, systematically. So they don't look at the one ailment that you may be going to see them for. They look at your entire body, every system in the body. So they take a whole body approach to healthcare. So while your symptom may be one thing, they may look at your body and go, oh, that symptom isn't coming from this. That symptom is coming from something that's going wrong in the whole circle of your body. So it's a completely different approach to medicine. The way that they approach the diagnostics are different. The way that they approach solutions are different. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors are just super quick to write that script. It's like quick to script.
Right.
Functional medicine doctors usually take a lot more time in their diagnoses and their care plan. And it includes all sorts of things that maybe a regular MD would not include. It could include hypnotherapy. It could be yoga. It could be bringing in a nutritionist onto your team, because so much about how we feel is related to the food we put in our body. So a functional medicine doctor is almost, I'm curious. I want to know, what is the definition, like the actual Webster's definition?
Yeah, but do they take insurance, or do they often not take insurance?
Absolutely. So a functional medicine doctor, by definition, is the healthcare professional who specializes in identifying and addressing the root causes of illness rather than just treating the symptom.
Okay, got it. So that's something you should do, listeners, is try to find a functional doctor. Functional medical doctor.
Functional medicine doctor.
Medicine doctor to look at your whole system. Okay.
And there is usually probably someone covered on your insurance. And honestly, if your insurance for some reason treats them out of network, invest the money.
Yeah.
Even if you invest the money in going 1 or 2 times, it will change the way you feel about your body. Even with a naturopath, that's an amazing practitioner that, again, looks at the body differently than, here's your illness, here's a drug, have a great day.
Yeah, well, that's what my naturopath did. And I'm actually having her on Friday. I'm interviewing her because it was a game changer for me. She was a game changer. So you talk about the spouse and the husbands. Tell me about what you offer for husbands and partners. Like what should we be doing with our husbands and our partners when we're going through this change?
So the first thing is talking about it. And the first thing is noticing what's happening in the relationship before it's become something so if you think about the reasons for divorce, lack of intimacy, fighting all the time, all of those things can be tracked back to what's happening to a woman. Shorter fuse, menopause rage, her vagina isn't functioning well, so she doesn't want to have sex. But she doesn't know how to say to her husband, dude, my vagina is so dry, this really hurts. All he hears is, my wife doesn't want to have sex with me. What's the deal? Is she going outside of the marriage? So then he doesn't know enough to say, what's wrong? Oh, I think my hormones are changing. And when my hormones change, that makes the walls of my vagina dry. And so sex is painful. Let's try another position. Let's try one of the So communication is key. So what we do is we have a course called Mansplaining Menopause, which we are, by the way, rebranding. Because 5 years ago, mansplaining was kind of hip and cool. But in today's world, it's not exactly. So we are calling it the Playbook for Partners.
So
inside of our Playbook for Partners, it's written by men. So we consulted and hired male doctors, male therapists, educators, and authors. So it's in man speak, so they could understand what's happening to their wife. Because think about it, even if you have the best relationship in the world and your husband is your best friend, you walking up to your husband and being like, my vagina is dried up, is not a conversation you are going to be excited to have.
Right.
But if he's already understanding what's happening to your body, why is our sex life going? He's now coming to you and saying, honey, I understand that you might be going through some hormonal changes. I read that there's this cream we can get at CVS that might help. Let's try it. Or, hey, I read that this position may not be as painful. All these different solutions. So what we do in our Playbook for Partners course is we teach someone who is not biologically a female, because you also could be in a partner relationship that's same sex and your partner is going through this. So we teach you how to notice the signs of what's happening, how to not take them personally, what you can do to be truly supportive, how to let your partner know that you're in this together, and more importantly, how many different solutions are out there. So even something as simple as sleeping. Sleep is a problem for couples no matter what. Some people want it hot, some people want it cold. There's all these different mattresses where you could get 2 different sides. So even just having the conversation about changing your sheets. I hear all the time from women that are like, I wake up in a pool of sweat. And the first thing I ask them is, what kind of sheets do you use? And they're like, oh, flannel. You may want to let's change your sheet. Let's change your pajama fabric. Let's change your bedtime habit. So I think also too, just knowing that there's things out there is game changing because a lot of women don't know what's out there. Men have no idea what's happening. In fact, Rod Stewart, the
Mm-hmm.
rock star, talks about this publicly, that he thinks every man should have to take a menopause course because he went through this with his wife. For years, they could not get her diagnosed properly. And he was like, I thought I was going to lose my wife. I thought I was going to lose myself. And he talks about this in Vogue and I think some other magazine. You can look it up, anyone, listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And so he runs a menopause charity with his wife in the UK, Rod Stewart. So I'm like, if Rod Stewart, this macho rock star man, was like, I wish someone would have taught me about menopause,
Right.
then it is good enough. So Rod, I built the course that you wanted that didn't exist for you. It exists now.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah.
Talk us through the corporate stuff. You know, I mean, fortunately, I haven't been there yet. Just imagine like you're in the middle of a meeting and not every woman who, by the way, listeners, like not every woman is going to have a hot flash. Some people do, some people don't. Some people can't sleep, some people can. It just depends. Every woman is different. But you are saying that there are a lot of women who leave their jobs because of menopause. And so what do you do within the company? So companies are open to this now? They're like, come on in and train our managers to...
Not as much as they should be yet. We still have some companies that when we reach out, they're like, why does this matter?
Mm-hmm.
We're like, well, the Mayo Clinic actually put a number on the cost of menopause to U.S. companies. So it was like 26.6 billion
Wow.
with a B. And it's a public article. And it talks about the indirect and direct costs of menopause to the American workplaces in the billions and billions of dollars, from absenteeism, presenteeism, replacement, training. Imagine if you lose one of your senior women. The
Right.
cost to hire and retrain and replace that woman is usually between 50 to 200% of her annual salary. So if you
Wow.
just lose one senior woman, the costs are there. So we can make a real case in a company for why this matters, why you should pay attention to this, because it affects your bottom line. Forget that it's also good corporate social responsibility. When you take care of the health of a woman, you take care of the health of her family, when you take care of the men. So now imagine, and that's the other thing too, is in a company, while it physically, biologically happens to women, think about every man that is going home to his wife or girlfriend or partner that is struggling with menopause. So if this guy is getting yelled at every morning and fighting with his wife every day and they're no longer having sex, I guarantee you he is not a super happy employee.
Right.
So he's bringing that absenteeism and that productivity. So that's why we take a 360-degree approach to this. This isn't just a women's issue. This is a family issue. This is a business issue. So we have a whole corporate leadership development training program.
Mm-hmm.
We have policies that we write for companies. So we help them really look at what are their policies. Does a woman who works in an office even feel comfortable enough to ask maintenance for a fan?
Mm-hmm.
Does she know that if she wants to change her meetings from 4, because by 4 p.m. her brain fog is too much, can she move that meeting to 11? Just even knowing that she has options, that she's supported, that she doesn't have to leave her job, that she can tweak her job without
Mm-hmm.
feeling needy. That's the other thing, is women don't want to be needy. They don't want special concessions. So rolling this out the right way is really important inside of companies. We're doing the same thing with schools because women are having children later in life.
Right.
And also creating some assets. We're making some tools for kids, like a coloring book. Why is mommy all hot all the time? And giving women scripts so they can talk to their kids. Honey, I'm not mad at you. Mommy's just having a hot flash, or in a way that speaks to children. So it starts at the company. If you see where we spend most of our time, we spend more, most of our lives we spend at work. So if we're supported at work and we're working for a company that is paying attention to what's happening to us in our lives, that's game changing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is the solution for these women who are having these kind of symptoms? Would it be hormone replacement therapy?
I have to tell you, there is so many solutions out there that there isn't just one solution for everybody. So I have a friend who tried all of the hormones. They made her worse, and her hot flashes and night sweats were out of control. So she downloaded this hypnotherapy app, changed her life with hypnotherapy.
Wow.
That worked for her. Yeah. So there are so many modalities, like hot flashes and night sweats. It could be just as simple as someone changing their sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's
Mm-hmm.
having issues with dryness in the, in the vaginal area. There's 1,000 different creams that you are over the counter, but you could also work with a compounding pharmacy and they will make you something special for your body chemistry. So it's all over the board. HRT and hormone replacement therapy is doing amazing things for millions of women. But for millions of women, they either can't take it because there's contraindications, or they don't want to take it because they're afraid of it. By the way, do not be afraid of it. Pursue the option with your healthcare provider, maybe get a bunch of different opinions, and maybe try it. Because if you try it and it doesn't work, you just don't do it.
They're scared of the study that said that it causes cancer, the debunked study. It still has the stigma. I mean, even I think maybe this is going to cause cancer. And I think, well, I'd rather have a quality of life now than I'll deal with that if that happens, because, who knows? There's many things that can cause cancer. Our environment causes cancer. The air we breathe in causes cancer. The water we drink causes cancer. So, I've kind of given up on that, but that is a barrier for women. They think that HRT causes breast cancer.
Yeah. And obviously that is
debunked.
It's been debunked. It is publicly been debunked, but it was not debunked as loud as it was when it was announced. So I feel like over the next year, when there's more visibility given on the fact that it was kind of retracted and more women are paying attention and Oprah's talking about it and everybody's talking about it, that will make women feel safer. But do not be afraid of HRT. If I can help one listener be like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go investigate it. It's worth investigating if menopause and symptoms are ruining your life. Because like you said, quality of life is the only thing. We're all going to die. No offense, all the listeners, in case you were wondering, you are going to die one day. There's nothing you could do about it unless you're Brian Johnson and he's a little, but we want to live.
Right.
So I would rather, like you said, I would rather live my best life possible than worry about if something that I need to do that is going to end my life. Because if I'm not happy, what am I going to do? Be not happy till I'm 100? Well, that makes no sense. I'd rather live a much better life and die when I'm 80 and take the risk. But that's me personally. But I understand the real calculated risk. So to me, if my symptoms, thank God I'm very lucky, are not life debilitating. I mean, they're not ideal. I don't like the fact that I used to have this big, gorgeous head of hair that I'm mourning. I don't like the fact that I gain weight faster now than I ever had. So don't get me wrong, but it's not derailing my entire life. But for many women, this literally derails every moment of their life. And it's worth exploring HRT for sure.
And you just brought up an important point, and that is grief of aging. So we talked about this when we first met, and there is a grieving process. Like when you look at your skin and you look at Instagram and you see all these like 25-year-olds, you're like, I used to be that. That used to be me. And now I'm not. And there is grief. How do we feel beautiful while we're aging? I mean, is it possible?
It is possible. And, I like to open many of my talks with, I say aging is a gift. How many of you would prefer the alternative?
Right.
And when you give people a moment to really put that in context, really understand that if they don't get the gift of aging, that means they are dead.
Right.
No one wants to be dead.
Yeah.
So when you phrase it that way, they stop looking at whether or not my hair is thin, or I got a little wrinkle, or I got a frown line, or my butt's a little bigger. Like all of these different things get put into perspective when you break it down to what is true, which is if you're not aging, you are dead. Those are your only
but
two
that's not a fun comparison. It's like, you're either age or you die.
Well, look at it. Look, you're laughing, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So I try to get people to really realize that aging is a gift. And when you see aging as a gift, you no longer look at that 25-year-old girl and go, that used to be me. You look at yourself in that moment and you are so grateful to be living, to be alive. You don't care about these little things from your youth. But that's different than the grief that we're talking about. Grief is a big thing. And in society as a whole, we're not taught to grieve well. We're not given grief lessons in school. When someone dies, most of our friends are like, oh, it'll get better. This too shall pass. Time heals all wounds. We're actually doing more damage in helping people grieve just because what we've taught, we don't know any better. So one of the key things that I noticed is the real grief around menopause that women don't even get to talk about. They don't get to mourn the loss of their hair or their fertility. That's the big thing here. Someone, especially if they waited their whole lives to be a mother and they identify at the core of their being subconsciously with being a mom, and now their fertility is gone, that rocks their whole belief system to the core. Well, if they don't acknowledge that and they don't grieve that, then it's just that secret little thing that is eating up at them that causes the depression, that causes all these other things. So it's okay. Grieve whatever you feel is lost. But on the other side of grief, you have to have the joy and the gratitude for the fact that you're alive. So I try to really break it down as basic as that, because when you have a gratitude for living, you don't look at young women and lament that you used to be that. Because guess what? I know a lot of young women who died when they were 25. We hear it all the time. Young people die all the time. Could you imagine being dead at 30? So if you're thinking about these things differently, which I go, is it positive? No, but it's not positive or negative. It's just the facts of being alive. So it shifts this whole fear and this whole lamenting into gratitude. Like, I am so lucky that I get to have wrinkles because there's millions of girls that don't.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky that I get to lose my hair because there's millions of women that don't. I can still go to Paris. I can still go skiing. I can still hang out with my friends. I can still have these incredible conversations with uplifting women like you. I can still drink my coffee every morning in my super funny cup that makes me laugh because I'm alive. So we try to make women be grateful to be alive, be grateful for aging, because it really is a gift, and it's a gift that not everybody gets.
And it's a gift of we are so much wiser and so much more comfortable in our own skin and experienced and sexy and able to really know what we like in the bed. I mean, there's so many positive things about aging that we overlook. So I try to remember all those things, but there is a grief when you do look at your skin and, aging. I mean, people say it all the time, oh, aging sucks.
And that's a shame. And so I also work really hard. That's my favorite thing to shift. Because when I look in the mirror, I mean, yes, of course I'm human. So every now and then I'll look in the mirror and I'll be like, fuck, or I'll put on a dress and I'll look at it and I'll remember the way it looked a couple years ago. And then I will snap myself right the fuck out of that within a second because I'm like, you know what? I am grateful because I get to be alive. So my father died when he was 53. I was 24 years old when I lost my dad.
I'm sorry.
And I remember how old I thought he was. So here I'm like, it was my dad. He was old. He lived a full life, all of these things. And it wasn't until a couple years ago when I got into my 50s that I was like, holy fuck, that's like me being dead in a year.
Yeah.
So it really put perspective to me even more so how grateful I am to be alive. So you know what? If you gave me a choice between living the rest, living up into the time I was 25 with beautiful hair and perfect skin and a tight body and all this like young stuff, but I'd be dead at 50, I'd say, you know what? Bring it on. Bring on the wrinkles. Give me the gray hair now. Give me the dry vagina now. I want it because I want to be alive.
Yeah. That's good. Well, you're so vivacious. I could see why. You just have such a vivacious personality. Well, as we wrap up, is there any tips that you can give women and men as we wrap up this amazing conversation? I just love having you.
Communicate. Remember, you're a team. And women, remember, you're not alone. And aging is not a death sentence. Embrace it. Educate yourself. Advocate for yourself. Learn everything you can. Have the tough conversations and stay inside that partnership. It's okay to talk about. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to talk about it both ways. So talk about it because there are so many solutions. You are not stuck in misery. If I could leave anyone with that, you aren't stuck. There are so many things you can do to save your career, to save your marriage, to save yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Rachel, will you tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, your wonderful website? I will also put it in the show notes.
Lovely. So our website is menopause-classes.com. You'll find our courses there for women. There's a free course you can take and then the full course that we offer. Our courses are also there for partners and husbands. There's a free course as well as a paid course. And then you can find out all the different services we have under corporate wellness. And you can reach me from the website. You're also more than welcome to put my email. My email is rachelann@menopause-classes.com. I do a lot of private coaching and I am fully accessible. So don't be afraid to reach out. If you have a question, I am always here. My phone number is actually on the website too. That goes to my personal cell phone. So this is my life's work. This is my purpose-driven entire reason for existing. So don't be afraid to call me or reach out or visit the website. I'm here to help.
Oh, that's amazing. So that could really be helpful for our listeners today. If they're really going through some kind of struggle, you could reach out to Rachel Ann and have a one-on-one session with her. I know that you have an event coming up in Marin County.
We're going to be doing an event in Marin, an amazing little sip and shop with Veronica Beard. We have some incredible hostesses. This is going to be Friday, March 28th from 12 to 4 p.m. at Veronica Beard in the Marin Country Mart. So if you stop into Veronica Beard during that time, there'll be some of our menopause experts and hostesses on site. There'll be refreshments. You get a discount. And also Veronica Beard is donating 15% of any revenue to Let's Talk Menopause, which is one of my favorite 501c3s that's doing amazing work in this world and in Washington and advocacy. So that's really super fun. That's coming up. And then we'll eventually have an event calendar that shows all these things on our website too.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you so much, Rachel Ann. And I look forward to more talks with you.
Yeah, super fun. Thank you so much for having me and addressing this really super important topic.
Thanks for listening to Talk with Tara. If you loved today's episode, follow the show and share it with a friend. Stay tuned. There's so much more to talk about. See you next time.